Hello and welcome to Transforming Healthcare, a programme from the Association of British Health Tech Industries and ITN Productions. I'm Natasha Kaplinsky. It's estimated that 1 in 2 people in the UK will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. But advances through research and technology are enabling earlier, more accurate and cost-effective detection. Helena Carter went to meet cancer diagnostic company Zilico Limited to find out about Z-Scan, their diagnostic tool for cervical cancer.
Across the UK, there's brilliant work being done in the world of science. The latest developments in technology are transforming healthcare, not just in the UK, but globally. Zilico is a medical diagnostic device and surgical tools company who are addressing a clinical need in healthcare. Z-Scan is their flagship product within cervical cancer.
Many diseases are still visually diagnosed, and clinicians are pretty good at that. But as you're trying to prevent diseases earlier, it becomes more challenging to find disease for clinicians visually. And this is where we come in. As disease moves from normal into early precancer, late precancer, and then invasive cancer, the properties of cells and tissue change. Equally, the electrical properties of those tissue and cells changes. And you can measure that. And the way you measure that is a technique known as electrical impedance spectroscopy.
Zilico's EIS technology is proving to be hugely beneficial when it comes to the cervical screening pathway. The traditional colposcopy method hasn't significantly improved since the 1920s, but Z-Scan is changing this. So talk to me a little bit about the process then.
Okay, so once we've passed the speculum, we apply the acetic acid. While that's working, I use Z-Scan. It takes 12 measurements from around the neck of the womb. It surveys the area where the precancer may be. Well, I think as a colposcopist, if you have a second real-time test available to you, then it improves your confidence in deciding how to manage somebody. So if you're seeing a patient and you think there might be disease there, it will give you a better indication of where to take a biopsy. That means that we're detecting more disease and reassuring patients who don't have disease. That has led to us taking fewer biopsies overall.
The technology is also helping to improve the overall experience for patients in clinics across the country.
Studies have shown that women who attend colposcopy clinics for whatever reason have high levels of anxiety, and if we can minimise that, that's great for the patients, but also it's good for our clinics. The additional benefit of being able to reassure patients and discharge them quickly is that we're freeing up follow-up appointments. From our validation with Z-Scan, it's shown that we will reduce the number of women that we are bringing back for follow-up.
Concerning cervical cancer, Z-Scan picks up 14% more disease. In what is a challenging area for clinicians, low-grade referrals, Z-Scan detects 50% more disease early on. Treatment at first visit has increased from 37% to 68% with Z-Scan. The electrical impedance spectroscopy technology has been further developed for use with oral, anal and esophageal cancers, as well as to allow more accurate assessment of tissue margins during surgery, including within robotics.
In the UK, we have a particular problem with mouth cancer. It is increasing, and we need new tools to be able to diagnose it earlier. Electrical impedance spectroscopy will allow us to be able to do that without a biopsy, and so it may encourage more people to come to have their mouth assessed, and that is the key message that we really need to get across to the public in terms of being able to reduce the burden of oral cancer in our communities.
Zilico are planning for their technology and products to be used worldwide and foresee their Z-Scan being part of the legacy that eradicates cervical cancer.
Thank you. That was my twin brother. Now you've got the real thing. So just a few slides, and you've got the gist of what Zilico does. So this is the problem that we're trying to solve. So Keith was talking about this, that you can see the picture there on the left. That looks more sinister than the one on the right. And they're doing this visually. But what we see is that the one on the right actually did progress to cancer and the one on the left didn't. And that's the issue that the clinicians are facing. Similarly, in the area of cervical cancer, this is the image of a cervix, which has a aceto-white disease on it. And a clinician is trying to work out whether this is high grade, low grade, and then this is where the challenge comes in. And that was the genesis of our technology, electrical impedance spectroscopy, first published in the Lancet in terms of our proof of concept that said, actually, there's significant merit in taking this further forward, which is exactly what we've done. So if you look at the cervical cancer market, then we think that's just under about $500 million for the Western world. But if you start to introduce the emerging economies, then that goes to just under $1 billion. We've done the usual thing of going through a number of trials, and our pivotal study published in the British Journal of Obs and Gynae. So just to remind you exactly where this fits in. So traditionally, women will have a smear test, and then if that is abnormal, they would be sent to colposcopy, which is just a visualization technique that hasn't actually changed for 90 years. This market, or this pathway, is being challenged with the advent of HPV in the role of cervical disease and molecular tests that are coming in. So in the UK, we're moving to primary HPV screening as of January 2020. The HPV test is a great test in terms of sensitivity, but like many biomarker tests, its specificity is actually pretty piss poor. So you will have a lot more women going into colposcopy as of next year. And this issue about moving to primary HPV has been recognized by a number of people. So the National Cancer Institute in the US and Geronimo and et al. Also have highlighted this. First Schiffman saying that we need a non-visual diagnostic to assess the women who are HPV positive. And Geronimo and colleagues have said that the performance of colposcopy post-vaccination is getting worse. The other way to look at that is that unless you use technology, you're not going to get the same or even better performance. I'm going to fly through this because this was in the video in terms of some real-world data that we've shown where we are detecting a lot more disease, especially in the low-grade referrals where we see a 50% increase in high-grade detection, and that is histologically confirmed. And we're doing that by taking fewer biopsies. So you can always try and find more disease by taking a scattergun approach and find more disease. But we are doing it more directive. And really for the health economics and procurement departments and payers, the 40% reduction in follow-ups is the great pull. We saw this again in the video. In terms of negative predictive value, then we're about 4 times still better than colposcopy. And in a modality of treatment at first visit for women who do have high grade, that has increased significantly at a 95% specificity. Again, if we look at that, the genotype breakdown, then we're seeing that clinicians do perform depending on what they see, which is not surprising. Whereas with electrical impedance spectroscopy, we are detecting very similar levels of disease, whether it's HPV-16 or non-16. So we bring this product. The adoption model is really getting other university hospitals starting to use this, and that's some data from Helsinki University Hospital, where whilst the numbers are smaller, the outcomes are very similar. NICE in the UK have recognized Z-scan. They introduced a MedTech Innovation Briefing Note in 2015. In 2018, there was a guidance notice with some very positive noises about Z-scan in there, and we expect recommendation in 2021. Having said that, whilst it's not yet fully recommended by NICE, like often the regulators are slightly behind the curve, we have centres in the UK already routinely using Z-scan. So you have 9 centres there, that as you can see. We've got another 6 in procurement as we speak. We've got another 5 currently evaluating and another 13 coming on board in the next 6 months. So they're already moving fast because they know with primary HPV, the number of women coming into colposcopy will increase 40 to 50%, and they just won't be able to cope with that capacity. We're seeing some of that impact going globally, but the 2 countries that I'll focus on as now is one is the fastest growing market, medical device market in the world, and then the largest market, which is the US. So if we look at China, 2 years ago we signed a strategic, what I call a hybrid license deal, with Max Health Medicine Group, a medium-sized business listed on the junior Shanghai stock market. And that will provide us with $12 million of minimum royalty. And they've also invested versus a license fee that better strategically aligns us as we go forward. So the CFDA process has just started, and we expect our product to be approved at the end of 2021. In the US, we've already started our discussions with the FDA and planning a single arm study, across 3 centers, about 600 patients. Again, that should be ready in 2023. If you look at the market potential just in terms of cervical cancer and colposcopy appointments in the developed world, just under 15 million. And then if you include the BRIC countries, that's an additional 30 million, albeit their screening practices are not as advanced yet. So we are currently defining and redefining the sales process as we try and educate and change behavior of clinicians. And that's typically the sales process that we have within the UK and the NHS. And I was talking to an investor earlier. One hospital, we've had procurement department or the business case in procurement for 12 months. But it's just part of the process of learning and getting that adoption up and running. But we're seeing that moving. As you can see, more and more women are being tested and more hospitals are taking this on. And this is not unusual in the screening world. So this is the move from pap smear to LBC, liquid-based cytology, and cytic took a number of years and capital investment. So when you work in the screening community, it takes time to change because governments are also involved. Again, WHO have published lists about the medical devices or diagnostics required for 2019 in their essential list, and Papa Nicolau test is in there, which again, if you're doing the pap test, you've got to do colposcopy, and it just shows that follow through. The video talked about our pipeline. I'm not going to focus too much on this today, but the oral cancer that we are developing, we've just received notification of a grant going forward for that. And the other is the intraoperative, which is really looking at tissue margin. And that's going to really explode as we get into true robotics, as currently I believe we're in machine assisted as opposed to real robotics. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, we have a significantly de-risked business. The science is proven. We have a product, the manufacturing supply chain has been de-risked. Now it's really the commercial challenge of getting this product onto the market. Thank you.